In today's episode, I speak with one of the founders of Safe Space, a community whose mission it is to offer world-class coaching and make it accessible to all. I'm talking today with Julius Cowdrey. How are you today, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I've been excited for this. I love your title. I love your mission. It's good to connect. I mean, look, the world is in a real crisis at the moment. I don't know if you've seen this recent stat on mental well-being, and they did it. I think it's called the Global Mental Well-being State. And it's a study that was taken over the last 3 years, but mainly last year, and 500,000 people on this were recorded through this stat. So a huge amount of people. And globally, UK sits second on the worst, second top to mental well-being, poor mental well-being. And that covers social connection, that covers purpose, drive, motivation. It covers all dimensions of mental well-being, mental health, and UK is second worst globally. So we're in a real crisis at the moment. People are struggling, people aren't connecting. So how do we get people to talk? How do we do things like this? Because this is what feeds the soul, right?
For the people that may not have come across you yet, do you want to tell people a bit about yourself?
Oh God, where do we start? Here we go. There's, when it's yourself, you know so much about yourself, you don't know which part to go deep into. I mean, there's a little. I'm half Swedish, half English. I'll go all the way back to the bat. So my dad's English. He played cricket professionally, so he's very much sporting background. And my mum was a singer. She was a jazz singer. So there was always this like sport and then creativity, right? And my brother went down the sport route. I went down the music route, and all I wanted to do was be a singer, and all he wanted to do is be a sportsman. And we both found real joy in doing those things. And actually, we lost our joy in doing those things. Lost the love of it. It's amazing when passion becomes a job, and then the job, you lose the purpose. And it didn't feed my soul anymore. And yes, we could go through different challenges when growing up and things like that. We can delve deep into if you like to. But if I were to shorten and summarize my life, I came to London looking for friendships and looking for fun. I had a bit of fun in nightlife, went into a TV show because I wanted to called Made in Chelsea because I wanted to, I don't know if you knew that, by the way, we haven't really spoken about that, but I went on a TV show for my music because it was a way to elevate my music. And then came away from that, set up a business, then came back to that, became a coach, and realized that my life wasn't aligned with the show. For me, being a coach and helping people, and the show is all about arguing with people. It's an obvious mismatch. And then my brother also became a coach, so we both worked for about 3 years with clients one-on-one. We realized very quickly that it's a very you're very lucky if you're able to work one-on-one with someone. It's the 1% who can afford to pay 3 figures a week to work with someone for an hour, and that didn't feel right. I'd work with clients who were really struggling. But then I'd say, I'm so sorry, if you can't afford it, we can't work together because I've got to know my value. But what if that person was also struggling as much as the client who could afford me? So we had these sort of battles with this industry where do people get the support? If the negative stats are rising, if the suicidal crisis in men is still going up, if stress stats, if loneliness stats, if employees are still unhappy at work, if people are not happy. Right. If we keep it simple, how do we give people a place where it's accessible and people can work on themselves? And so we set up the Safe Space to make world-class coaching accessible to all, but also allow people to connect with others. And we're doing a big reshift, which launches April 1st. So that's a bit about me, but we can speak for hours.
No, I love it because that you are absolutely right. That is a conundrum. I'm somebody whose mission is to help as many people as I can with their self-development. And I offer coaching services, and part of my offering is this podcast. There's no charge for this podcast, and they get to hear wisdom from people like yourself. That's free. That's a way to help. But, it offers a perspective. It offers potentially solutions. But at the same time, it's not that one-to-one work. It's not someone being able to communicate their problem. Because let's face it, coaching's a lot about listening for us as coaches, isn't it? And we don't always get the opportunity to listen to people if they're just, listening to the podcast. And I started doing masterclasses and putting them out, and they're doing very well. And I've lowered the cost so people can afford it. But it's still not enough. And that's why I think that movements like yours like organizations like yours, causes like yours are so needed. And I love that because in some ways there's a view that maybe you never have to do something like this. That maybe you could go carry on singing, you could carry on being on the television, you could carry on doing all of these things. But what I admire about you is that you've stepped away from that to do this. Now, that speaks a lot to integrity and character, which makes me really, really happy to hear, because I don't. There's a lot of people out there that are in the public eye that say a lot of things, but they don't often do it, and that's difficult. So, moving on to let's address Made in Chelsea, because I know there'll be people saying, "Hey, you never brought it up," and all that sort of stuff. But how was that as an experience? Was it a good experience?
Yeah. It's one of those things which I kind of I'm glad I did it. It was one of those things. I speak to a friend of mine who's also on the show, Digby, and we look back on it. We both decided to do different. We had this urge inside us. You said earlier that I wanted to do something else. I did because I had this feeling, this gut instinct. I need to get away from this. This isn't me. The show it reeks of conflict, and you're constantly challenged by that. And if I had a shoe brand, or if I wanted to be, or I just wanted to be on TV and that was my thing, or I was an influencer or whatever, doing the show and getting in fights. I mean, I kind of thrived in it. I quite enjoyed it because I pretended as a different person. If I'm honest, it was me. I was like, well, I'm in an act here. I'm the show Julius. Let's go. Let's make this show amazing. Yeah. That was kind of how it felt. But let's be honest.
You played your role.
I played my role, and it's as simple as that, really. But when I started, it felt so misaligned with my life when I'm working with clients one-on-one, and we're talking about resolution and peace and communication. And those are three things I'm not showing on a Monday night at 9 p.m. I'm doing the complete opposite. The show took me to amazing countries. I got introduced to incredible people. Some are camera crew and producers, as well as cast. Some, a couple of my best friends in the world are from the show. So it gave me some really cool opportunity and just insight, and also insight into the world of TV, and to be a part of it. It's just been like, in my 20s I had some fun. I had to read it. I had to discover myself. I came to London not knowing who I was. I came to London not really with many friends. I'd been really badly bullied when I was younger. I'd gone through it. So I went into nightlife. Then I became a singer-songwriter, and then I went into a TV show. And if I look back at this weird, crazy 20s, I don't look back on it and go, well, I shouldn't have done that or that or that. I look back on it as like, I had to discover who I am to get to where I am right now. For the first time in my life, and my brother said the same thing. For the first time in our lives, we feel like we are meant to be here.
Love that.
And I've never felt like that before.
I absolutely love that. And, I resonated with that a lot, because when I was younger, I was a professional wrestler, which often shocks people. And I got to travel the world. And I don't know if you know anything about professional wrestling, but, there are good guys, bad guys, all that type of thing. And I was very often the bad guy. My job was to sell the fight by being the biggest arsehole I could be. And I threw myself into that job, and I absolutely loved it, because I got to channel every person that I also was bullied at school. So I got to channel every bully I'd ever met, every person I disliked, and really put it out there. So I understand how that must feel. It's very liberating to be able to do that. And I can imagine, I know it is quite addictive. It's quite an addictive feeling to go through. But you also mentioned that your father was a sportsman, and a successful one at that. And I believe your grandfather was as well. Is that right? And what was that like growing up with that potential pressure? Was there any pressure? Did you ever feel that at all, or not really?
Not from them.
Okay.
Actually, my dad early on said, I'd prefer if you weren't. I didn't go into that. So it was almost like a family business, really, because it was my great grandfather played first class cricket, and then my dad played, and then my grandpa captain England, and he became a lord. He became a baron. For his services to the game, but also he did a lot for apartheid in South Africa. He did a lot with Nelson Mandela. There was an incredible journey that he went through and some really challenging times. It was part of the House of Lords. So he had this incredible journey, and he died when I was 7. And I wish I got to just have a conversation of substance with him, because he's really he's sort of this hero of mine. But I've never really been able to. I was a kid wanting to play cricket in the garden with him. But the amount of people who speak to me about him speak to me about him like he is legendary, really. So not just on the field, but off. And then my dad played cricket in Captain England, and then my uncle played first class cricket for Kent, and then my brother played. So growing up was a bit strange because, I was signing autographs at 7, 8.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're related too. We did a Cowdrey family documentary in the house. It just always felt a bit strange, but it was sort of, I guess it was normal. I guess it was normal because I hadn't had anything different. But when people spoke about him, I'm sure my dad gets a bit bored of having to go, yes, dad was, constantly people, I remember you old man and all this, because people are always chewing his ear off about that. But I think I look at it as a privilege.
Nice.
It was an amazing thing to be a part of that. But I was always told to sort of fly in my own way. It was never, you need to follow in these, you need to do this. It was actually, it's a lot of pressure going down that.
Yeah.
And my brother had experienced that, and my brother went through some really challenging times mentally going into the sport. But yeah, it's all these things. It's like, what sort of perspective do you give to something? It's like, okay, I got bullied when I was younger. So did a lot of people. So I'm not asking for sympathy or for you, because a lot of us go through that. And God, I would have asked for it when I was 16 for sure, and I probably got it. But it's where do you throw the shade on your life, and where do you throw the light? And yeah, I could look back at times when I felt very different, and maybe got a bit of a hard time because of the family. I could go, well, it was a tough time because it was, but actually I try and find the light in it. I look at the bullying and I try and find the light in it. I'm resilient. God, I'm resilient because I've had what I had to go through. I know what it feels like to be lonely. I know what it feels like to be the little kid in the corner who no one likes. And that was really tough at the age of 12. And so it's where I try not to throw shade on even the darkest times, on the tough times, because there's always light. There's always a bit of light at the end.
Yeah.
And it's not very easy to see it in the moment, but I try and find it eventually.
No, it never is. And once again, I find myself getting goosebumps, resonating. I grew up with domestic violence. I grew up with being tortured and abused as a kid, and I ended up in addiction a bit later in life. And all of those things are really easy to look at and say, oh my gosh, what awful things. And yes, they were awful. Of course they was. Watching your people you love getting beaten and hurt is not a good thing. But then I come to the person I am now and the people that I help and the way that I'm able to help. And I wonder if I could be as effective as I am if I didn't have those experiences. And
What do you think?
well, I don't think I could. And as much as I want to resist saying that and look at it for the potentially ridiculous statement that it is, I also think it's true. And what I have become is I'm a coach, and I see the same thing in you, but I'm also a truth seeker. I was at a conference a little while ago, and I was on a panel, and somebody challenged something I said. And I didn't respond. And they said, oh, you're not going to respond. I said, well, I don't feel like I need to. It feels more like you needed to say that, and that's okay. Because, see, I'm not here to be right or wrong. I'm not here for you to worship me like a guru or to convince you I'm the smartest person in the room. All I'm looking for is the truth. And if my version of the truth isn't right or it doesn't align with you, that is absolutely fine. Let's explore it. Let's have a conversation, and let's find out what's true. Now, it turned out that he had misunderstood the question, but it still stands. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what's true. And I see that same thing in you. There's no ego. And there could be, with all of your history and all of the things that you've done, there could be ego. And for some people out there is, but I don't see that in you. And I respect that a lot. And I really do.
It's the ego is a funny one, because I'm sure you talk a lot to your clients about ego.
I do.
I feel like, yeah. And I feel the same energy from you, Johnny. I feel a real warmth. I feel like you'd be a very good coach, because you're a good listener, and you can, and when you can tell someone, we're all energy. You can tell pretty quickly from someone, from the way they just hold themselves, that you have a good energy about you. I think it's probably one of the better compliments someone can receive. Actually, I remember someone saying that to me. I thought, God, that's a nice thing to say, but it's true. I'm not saying it because you've said nice things about me. It's a warmth, and it's nice, and it's also there's an element of you reaching that warmth. I mean, I bet when you were 15 years old, you would have reacted differently to that guy challenging you, right? Yeah. And it's through your hardship. And I'm not saying anything you don't know, but it's through your hardship that you've either had to choose looking at your life in a challenging way, you can look at your life in two ways, like the shade or the light, right?
Yeah.
And we can resent the world for what happened to us, or we can find light in it and actually be like, but do you know what? I wouldn't be here who I am as a result of those things. So maybe they were okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't like to make a lot of space for hate. I don't see the point. I'm always, I had the privilege of walking around an old people's home once, doing some interviews and asking them, people that were very close to the end of their life, what's important. Nobody said a six pack. Nobody said that job that they had when they was 30. No one said any of that stuff. Like, they said spending time with people, and they realised it. One woman did quite playfully say, "Eat the cake." That was quite funny. I quite liked that, but it just shows to me, it's the relationships you build, it's the experiences you have. It's not the big houses and the cars. That's lovely. I've been very lucky. I live in a really nice house. I've got a very nice life, but what's important to me is the people in my life and the experiences I get to have. And when I say the people in my life, I mean my clients. I mean the people that listen. I mean meeting people like you. This is going to be a highlight of my day, maybe my week, and I'm grateful for that. And for me to go up against that guy and say, hey, look, you're wrong and I'm right. Well, how do I know that? Because at the end of the day, facts are always changing, and it's the way it is. And everyone has the pleasure of a different view of life, and everybody should just listen to each other a little bit more, I think.
That's it.
Yeah, they
should.
should.
It's connection. It's like we realize very quickly with Safe Space that connection is actually the key to the lock, really, to unlocking people's suppressed thinking, to unlocking their anxious thinking, their worry, their fear, all these negative thoughts, anything that creates a sort of a, I keep saying shade. I've never said light and shade before, and today I said that, but to,
I love it.
To
it's
allow,
good look.
but there you go. But to also zoom out on our life and be like, actually, it's all okay. But connection and talking. I know that I'm most stressed or anxious or worried when I haven't communicated something, and so how do we communicate better? I remember someone saying to me the other day, he said, it's going on social media to find connection. It's like going for dinner with someone. They sit inside and eat their steak, but you look through the window and assume they're okay.
Yeah.
And they might be wearing a nice jacket, and they might be eating a good steak and have a glass of wine, and they might be smiling, but you didn't ask them how they are.
Yeah.
And with rise of technology and connection, it's got to be one of the main reasons why mental well-being is low and down. And if we can create connection, which is why Safe Space has been done, it's why you created this podcast, no doubt. It's why you went to become a coach. You wanted to help people talk and be there. It's like, can we do that on a mass scale? Can we get more people talking? Because if that is the key, I believe it is the key to unlocking positive well-being, then how do we drive that further? It's one of those questions that I don't know if anyone can really answer yet, but we'll try.
Well, it sounds like you're like the research, and you're the guy doing it. You're the guy figuring it out. And I've learned over time through psychology and whatnot that conversation is how human beings organize their mind. Now, there's nothing more terrifying sometimes than someone being alone with their own thoughts, because then they're dictated by their mood and their emotion. And that's the lens they then analyze their thoughts and process their thoughts and organize their thoughts through. So conversation's important. Saying words out loud is not just for the other person to hear, it's for you to hear it too. How many times have you found yourself saying something and then you go, I didn't know I felt like that? Well, you said it. And it's just interesting. And that's why I think, and I love the name as well, Safe Space. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And I really want you now to really explain what Safe Space is, tell people what you've created and how you believe it can help people.
Absolutely. Well, so on April the 1st, when is this coming out, by the way?
It will probably be after April the 1st. So,
Okay. So I'll explain it. Safe Space is, to put it simply, the place you come to find your community. We initially started with one community where we bring on coaches to deliver sessions for people, and it was a £30 a month subscription. We've remodeled to you come to Safe Space to find free or paid communities. So now Safe Space is free, and it's all delivered on a WhatsApp community. So it's right at your phone.
Nice.
It's simple. It's on your phone. It's there. And you can join meetups in London. There's one of our amazing members, Claire, is going to run a run club. We have a need support. We have different styles of meetups and conversations. We have a founder network. which is, it gives basically people a chance to find their people. And if you want to unlock a coaching community, we started with 4 coaches, Charlie Malt, who's a breathwork coach, Amira Mansour, who's a communication expert. She's incredible. Valentina Martzola, who is confidence guru. Limitless Living is her community. And Roxy Marone, who is gut specialist, who's amazing nutrition. They are all the best coaches that we have worked with. And so we're starting with the 4 communities. So you can come to Safe Space and join others who want to do better and feel better and not feel connected. You can also join coaching communities at your fingertips to be guided to a better existence. And so, yes, there's a bigger picture, and yes, we want to take it to an app, and we want to have hundreds of coaches and thousands of coaches and hundreds of thousands of people be able to access it. But now we start with the best we've got, and then we grow, and it's going to be an exciting journey ahead.
What have you heard? What feedback have you got back from it? Because I'd imagine that opportunity, not just to meet other people, because I found as well when I've set up communities that in the beginning I'm putting a lot of energy in, and I'm sort of not directing it, but I'm holding that space, and then slowly over time I find that the members themselves, as they develop, they take more control, and people are people, right? We all have very similar issues, and it all comes down, in my opinion, at the end of the day, it very much comes down to emotions. People are experiencing emotions in some regards, only in some regards. It doesn't really matter what happened. What matters is the impact it had on you, because people are very tempted to blame, which will keep you stuck in that cycle of blame, when actually sometimes you just got to understand that this thing has happened. I experienced this emotion. I didn't really want to, so I decided to avoid it, and this is what I did. And you get people that go, okay, so I feel shame about that. Well, we've all done that. Oh, have you? Yeah. And then that's when the community starts to come. And guess what that does? It allows people to go, okay, there's no judgment here. There's no shame here. I feel like I can now tell them this bit and this bit. And before you know it, you're building a community of truth. And that's what I hear when you say that you're dealing with, again, because I'm a truth seeker, I'm interested in what's real, what's true, real solutions to real problems. Breathwork's amazing, cold water swimming's amazing, but it's not going to help you if you're deep in a depression. What will help you is things that you least want to do, which is talk to people, go outside. So you're organising run clubs, you're organising ways for people to get together. So what feedback have you had so far?
Well, we're not trying to be the cure, we're trying to be a preventative.
Love
right?
that.
We've always wanted to be a preventative solution. We want to help you if you are between a 0 and a 10, if you're anywhere between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, anywhere there, how can we get you better? If you are near a 1 or 2, and I've worked with clients who don't want to be around anymore, then seek help, find help. There is someone out there who can help you. Whether it's a therapist, it's a coach, whoever it is, there is someone who wants to help you, and then you can get that support. We want to help you get to the place you've always wanted to be. That's why we love coaching. That's why you can now. The feedback we've got, interestingly, is because Safe Space was created as one community with different coaches. The reason why we've remodeled to you can now find your own community within Safe Space, and the coaches have their autonomy to run their ship, is because people in the community were going, I only come for Valentina, or I only come for Amira, or I want to come for, I just want to be part of it for the meetups that I love in person.
Yeah.
And so if you can give people a variety, and actually, instead of us telling you what we think is good for you, here's some sessions here. It's join your people. Don't be alone.
Yeah.
If connection's a thing, if people are lonely, well, there's just an array of options here. And if you want to leave whenever you like, there's no pressure.
I love that.
Instead
That's
of come
so
and join
genuine.
our community. And we just, and look, I want to also, down the line, I want to be able to create something for men. I feel like I did a charity cycle last year for James's Place, and there are some amazing people doing incredible things for charity, and I wanted to support this Men in Suicidal Crisis. It's a charity because I've lost someone, my brother's lost someone, and I want to create something. I don't know what it is, but I want to create something for men to give men a place to speak as well. Because I think among the stats of it's not really spoken about. It's incredible how men are struggling because we're all in hushed tones. We're the majority. We're not right now. We're open and we're receptive, but most men are. But we're still hushed tones about that stat that is continuing to rise. And is there anything we can do about it? I hope Safe Space can do that. I know this podcast there'll be men listening to and feeling feeling like it's helping them. And is there any more we can do? I don't know.
Yeah, well,
Um,
like yourself, I get to speak to a lot of men in various different ways, through the coaching, but also through social media. And the things I hear a lot of is with men, a massive one is anger. Anger, because a lot of the way that we live our lives at the moment, and one of the reasons why they don't talk is because it's still, even now, seen as a weakness. Stop whinging, stop moaning, stop getting up in your feelings, all of these different things. And that's why, again, your program, your whole organization, Safe Space, is such a great word, safe space, because it is a safe space. There's no judgment here. I've had guys come up to me and they're talking to me about something, and I'm seeing their eyes. They're watching me. They're looking me in the eye to see whether I'm going to be judging them, or whether I'm going to be surprised by what they've said, or whether I'm going to be disgusted, or whatever it is, in my face. And they're watching me. And the way I respond, and yes, I've been trained, but the way I respond determines what they say next or what they don't say next. And whatever they don't say and they hold inside them, that could be the thing that causes the problem for them to not want to be around, in a couple of weeks or months or whatever. So you're right. It's vital, men and women. And I think something that has to be accepted in society is that we are all human beings, but men and women are different and we do function differently. Most women, not all women, find it a lot easier to talk. And that's because women are more receptive to their emotions. Whereas men, you have this movement of being stoic. And people mistake stoic for being like, okay, just don't speak, just be alone with your feelings. But it's not. It's about making sense of your mind. That is what stoicism's about, and that gets lost due to things like social media. But
isn't it amazing? Can I just add to that? Because you've got my mind going so much on everything you said.
nice.
Isn't it incredible how, because I used to be that guy who didn't want to speak, wanted to look all cool and whatever,
Yeah.
and be attractive. Because there's an element of us walking around on this planet wanting to be attracted to the opposite sex biologically, right? So, or not the opposite sex, or whatever you're interested in. Sorry.
Yeah.
And we have this in us, whether it's cultural, whatever it is, this stoicism, this thing as a man, that women want us to be avoidant. We're not there, scarce. But there's nothing secure about avoidance, and really, any secure relationship must be secure for it to be healthy. And so, maybe, I don't know what it is, but maybe if women are better, it's two parts, isn't it? It's men have to feel, have to take action more and be on opening up, which is really hard.
Yeah.
And if I've spoken to a lot of my clients. Maybe is there any part of that where a woman can ask her man to open up? Because she has such an ability. Women have this incredible ability to be able to open up and be receptive and understand your emotions just by looking at you. That is an ability that women have. Supposedly, actually, I'm the stat man today, but 80% better ability to be able to be receptive and understand an emotion just by looking at your face.
80%.
80% better. And so parts of the brain that are bigger and have the ability. So it's not just societal. Yeah. It's not just because women have been okay, you can feel, and men don't feel. It's actually an ability. So if that is the case, how can we help men feel more? And also, men, what can we do to speak to our partners? What can we do to try and feel more open?
Yeah.
And by the way, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, finish what you said.
I asked the question because I don't necessarily know the answer, but I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I wonder if it's around validation. I meet a lot of guys that tell me that they're angry and then they shouldn't be angry. So they tell themselves it and they don't want to be angry. And I'm like, well, that again is exactly what you just said. That's avoidance. But you are angry. So let's talk about what is causing that anger. Let's look into it, because the anger is a reaction to something else, right? It's a reaction.
Do you think that people don't ask for the deeper meaning?
Yes.
Things? Do you think they sort of just accept? They accept the emotion and they don't try and delve a little deeper to understand why it came to fruition anyway.
Yeah, I think it's like having a headache and taking paracetamol. Instead of thinking to yourself, I've got a headache, oh, it's because I've not slept enough or I'm dehydrated. It speaks to what safe space is all about, and that is making it a prevention rather than a cure. Let's not get to the point where we have a headache. Let's just make sure that we're looking after the essentials now. And I think I can hear, I don't know if there is, but and maybe you can answer that. Is there an educational element to safe space? Is there like some pillars or some formats of some kind where men, women, whoever can look at their emotions and understand emotions. That's my thing. I love dealing with emotions. And I think it's really important. So is there an education element yet, or is that something to look to in the future?
God, again, something to the future. We want to eventually work with schools and sports teams
Amazing.
and go down any route really. But it's about, with any business, it's about starting small and growing.
Yeah.
And each coach that we bring on, which we sort of hand select, will be very much delivering their expertise and their education within their group.
Yeah.
But also we want to give as much free as we can.
Yeah.
If you're a part of the community, you can join Valentina's 1 month to check it out. If we'll be sending messages each day for motivation or things like this and meetups. It's really just, it's trying to give people a space where they can feel open and accepted.
It's like a more personalized social media, isn't it? In a way, like, how like someone might follow an account for inspiration, and you guys have just dialed it in that bit much more by the sound of it.
Yeah, and we hope people are receptive, as we believe it sort of. We've looked as founders, we believe this is what people need. Now it's about the coaches being as brilliant as we think they are, and it's about the members being as open as they can be, and we will continue to learn what we need to learn from. Just that, I'm sure your first podcast wasn't as good as you are now, and and I always say that. The first podcast is always terrible.
Oh, it was shocking. Terrible? It was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. It was. Yeah. I don't even know how to articulate it.
Hello, my name. I bet you forgot to talk.
Oh, it was crazy.
So nervous.
I was working with a friend who was very seasoned, and she just had the field day. She thought it was hilarious. She was not taking it seriously at all, which is, I now look back fondly. At the time, I was like, what are you doing? But it's what it is.
But you're doing the reps though, aren't you? You're doing reps. It's like, I hear Tony Robbins speak about doing public speaking. He was doing public speaking like 4 times a week at one point with his mentor Jim Rohn, and he was learning public speaking. He's like, I'm going to do as much as I possibly can. My dad's a public speaker now, and he speaks in front of 100, 500,000, 2,000 people. He's unbelievable public speaker. Just speaks around sport and events. But he is so calm when he's up there, you'd never know. He's not nervous, He's just so relaxed. So Steph Curry's going to knock it, but he's likely to hit it in the back back of the net.
Yeah.
But it's because he's had so many throws that it's just ingrained.
I believe that is doing that real ego work. That's what that is. It's I found that when I work with people, when I talk with people publicly, when I do the public speaking, I've taken the pressure off of believing that I have to have all the answers. I've taken the pressure off of thinking that I have to be an authority or smarter than anybody else or anything like that. I'm out there to deliver information that I'm passionate about, that I love, and let's explore it. I like to bring people. I don't want to be the leader. Let's just sit and explore, And I think it sounds a bit like that's what your dad's doing. He's like, hey, listen, I'm not going to teach you how to play cricket, but I'm going to talk about the inner workings. There's experiences I've had that might be helpful or they might not, And sometimes things can be helpful, but 5 years later, you can remember something someone told you and you go, that's what it means. There's a saying I love, and it's a boy looks to his father and says, Dad, every year you become smarter and smarter. And I love it because it's obviously not the dad getting smarter, it's the kid's awareness. And this is what happens when we self-develop, isn't it? We become more and more aware of things as we move along. And if you're open to it, as savage as as life can be, it's generally quite playful. Like I always say, like I get taught a really valuable lesson just with a little bit of a gut punch at the same time. Sometimes I wish there wasn't a gut punch, but there is always for some reason.
There's always a bit of healing, isn't there?
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. I like that. It's always a bit of healing. We're going to change lanes a little bit. I want to move. You're one of the co-founders. Your brother as well. Is it Fabian? Yeah.
I've got a twin brother. You'd be very disappointed that I haven't brought him up sooner.
Well, let's give him some airtime. Hey.
Yeah. And in he comes. No, I'm joking.
As if by magic. Like.
Yeah. My Siamese twin. No, Fabian is, my rock. Really, I never thought we'd be business partners because we always had our different path growing up. He was always wanting to be a sportsman. I wanted to be a musician. So But when we came to both wanting to really help people, and what did that mean, and how do we become a coach, and how do we train, and then we started working with clients, and then we had this sort of common ground of we need to help more. There's an accessibility issue. People are struggling. Why aren't, how do we help people develop further, but not charge through the roof? But what do we can do? And we started delving. We thought, God, maybe we do this together.
Shared purpose.
It's amazing when you work with your twin brother, because you can sort of get angry and then sort of make up 3 seconds later. Do you know what I mean? We know our intentions are good.
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation I sometimes have with clients when someone gets frustrated with someone that they said something, and is your friend's intentions good? Well, yeah. I said, well, do you think they maybe meant it that way, when it's maybe something that's been miscommunicated? There's never really a miscommunication. If we want to say how we feel, we say how we feel. That's the amazing thing about family, because you know them so well. So yeah, we also both have our own individual strengths, and I will continue to do my best. We're working with each other for each other. We have a bigger, greater mission that is so much bigger than us. So
love it.
But yeah, it's really fun, actually. It's fun.
I love what you said there about intention. I wonder how many conflicts could be disarmed if you stopped for a moment and considered the intention of the comment. Was it a clumsy comment? Because if you're going to get on somebody for saying something in a clumsy way, you better not never do that yourself.
My God.
You better not ever do that yourself, because I tell you what, that'll make you the world's biggest hypocrite.
Also, I wonder how many conflicts would be squished if we didn't text each other.
Like cadence in Texas. Yeah.
How passive aggressive does every message sound?
You look at it through the lens of your own mind, don't you? Like, if you're pissed off and someone sent you a message, you can see it as them getting angry. You're absolutely right. I mean, WhatsApp's the devil. WhatsApp groups, whoa, don't even get me started on WhatsApp groups, man. It's like, if I played, I could ruin people's lives just for showing some WhatsApp groups out there. It's like when people don't think anyone's watching, huh? But I like to be the guy that I like to behave the way I want to behave, whether anyone's watching or not. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't always work, but that's always my intention.
Well, yeah, look, and none of us are perfect. We all try to do our best, but
exactly.
And we've all been young and stupid and thought things, and it's always the ego. So I actually have a question for you, Johnny. You speak about the ego a lot. If someone's listening to this and they feel like maybe the ego is something that really takes a charge of their life, and I've been like that and the ego is I, isn't it? The ego is like, why is the world against me, or why do they treat me like that, or when we blame others for and really in that place, because a lot of people go to the victim mindset, and that's very much egos in the ego space. What would you say to them to give them advice to maybe look at things a little differently?
I think it's first of all, self-compassion. And what I mean by that is that the ego is not good or bad. I don't believe that it is. I think that the ego is always trying to gravitate you towards what's comfortable. Now, what's comfortable is not always good for you. You know, I found drinking alcohol comfortable, but it wasn't good for me. And what the ego is also trying to do is move you away from what's uncomfortable. Now, sometimes in self-development or just moving forward or doing something to improve your life, if you've never done it before, it's going to be unfamiliar. If it's unfamiliar, that's going to make it uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. And the ego will shout and shout and shout in probably someone else's voice sometimes. You know, it might be your father's voice. It might be a teacher's voice or something. And it will shout, danger, danger, run away. This is not good for you. This is wrong. This person's doing that. This person's doing this. And the paranoia starts. But actually, it's scared. And I think sometimes it's our job to say it's okay and listen to the ego. Listen to it. Don't ignore it like a child. You know, if a child, ego can be very childlike. And if you ignore a child, it just escalates until they're smashing stuff and throwing stuff, and you have to listen, and then you tell them off. And this is what the ego could do, I think. I think it's one of those things where it's like it's trying to tell you something. Now, sometimes it's right and you need to listen, but other times it just needs reassuring. But at least you've listened to it, because it's trying to move you away from what's uncomfortable and towards what's comfortable. And that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just something that you need to be aware of, you know? That's my answer. I hope that's
it's a good one. It's the chimp paradox. I mean, the ego is that chimp on your shoulder, or the child who doesn't want to get, who wants to get his way or her way, right? And when my brother actually has a nice analogy for this. I know, I'm sure you've come up with lots of different analogies as you've coached people. I come up with them on the spot sometimes. I'm like, is that even a good analogy? But you try and create analogies for your clients that
So they can
suits
help.
them. So,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that it hopefully can be sort of, I think things are done, things are communicated easier sometimes in pictures or stories, aren't they? I've got a 13-year-old client who I very much deliver stories to help my 13-year-old client sort of him sort of help to see things. And like I have a very much a business minded client, and to help her with her, she loves to see. I was like, does this profit your life if we were to think about it that way? And
Nice, like that.
talking about sort of the crying kid that is angry and is the ego. It's like if you blow into a balloon enough, right, it's gonna pop, or it's the same as if you, I mean, if you throw enough of these thoughts in a bin, it's going to overflow. And it's the same as that loud kid who's going to just confront.
Yeah.
So then it all comes back to communicating with ourselves.
That's right. Absolutely. It does. And and again, I find that when we communicate with ourselves, we're harsh. We call ourselves names. We judge ourselves. We speak to ourselves. We'd never speak to anybody else that way. I remember when I used to work as a PT, and people would come through the door and I'd say, what's driving your decision to lose weight? And they'd say, oh, I hate myself. And I'd say, okay, so this is going to get hard. All change is hard. So when this gets hard, that driver, that motivation of I hate myself, is that going to be helpful? Because I don't think it is. It's not. And again, asking someone then to love themselves, I mean, good luck with that in England. It's not going to go very. But sometimes people just need to get to know themselves. Most people don't know what they love doing, what they don't love doing. That's why they're directed by everybody else. That's why it's so easy to influence these days, because people don't know their values and they don't know who they are. And it's a very simple process. Investigate, explore, make mistakes. Think back at the things that you value the most in your life. Like, what experiences? Was it that lovely car you bought, or was it that time with your granddad? What was it? What was it that you valued the most? Because that's going to tell you who you are. That's going to tell you what your core values are. That's going to direct you. That's going to be your moral compass in life. You're getting me started now. And this is not about...
No, I love it because...
It's not about me, it's about you.
No, but I bet everyone's going to be able to relate to that.
I hope
it's like
so.
when you're in the dark in the tunnel and things aren't so good and it's hard to see the light. Yes, that friend could put his arm around his shoulder, or that friend could put their arm around his shoulder and go, yeah, but look at all these things in your life are good. But you're just like, I don't care. Well, I can't see that right now. And sometimes, because we're not very good to ourselves, we stay in that tunnel too long. So what can we do to realize all these good things? As soon as you were saying all those things, I was remembering all these nice things I have in my life, because how easy is it to get stressed, worried, down, anxious about things that maybe we could be a bit kinder to ourselves in. I know
Absolutely.
A lot of people are going through massive things, and I know people and trauma and pain. I've worked with clients who've been through some of the most awful things. And I've been through my own trauma and things. But most of the time, if I'm okay to say this, most of the time our problems aren't too big if we zoom out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. And and it's interesting that the next question was, we're going to shift lanes, because I love to learn a little bit more about you in the time we've got left. And the big question for me would be, well, there's two important questions I think I'd love to ask before we close this down. First one is, what was one of the most challenging experiences that you've been through in your life, and what did you learn from it?
It's hard to pinpoint one. I feel like, because they all hit you in a different way, don't they? Ooh. I've got three things that are sort of on my mind that are really, I think betrayal is one of the hardest things to overcome, because you never expect it coming. And I guess it's hard to necessarily talk about this because they might be listening. So one thing I found very tough was so my childhood with being this is quite a vulnerable thing for me to go here. I'm very vulnerable here.
Okay.
Which is a good thing, to be vulnerable. Now the three I'll try and pinpoint one. Okay. One of them is when I was bullied and left thinking no one will ever like me. That was one of them. That was really confusing, because home was a happy place.
Yeah.
Number two was my dad, finding out my dad was broke my mum's heart. That's something I rarely ever talk about. And that's that was a very tough thing to overcome, to see your father be your hero and then find out that he's had multiple affairs.
Yeah,
And it goes deeper than that, and it doesn't need to go deeper than that on
of
here.
course.
And my third one was being cheated on myself. Is actually looking at all the things, and there are some other things that went on when I was younger, but interestingly, I came up with those three, and they all sort of have this element of betrayal. I always felt like, and I blamed the world, and I did the ego thing. Now, things hurt you the most when you don't expect them to happen.
Isn't that truth?
Now, I went to school thinking everyone would like me because I was liked at home. And then you go, well, you're a kid, you're 10, you're 30. I was massively, I mean, I would never wish that on anyone, what I had to go through, my brother had to go through when we were younger. And then growing up and always looking up to someone and seeing what they're capable of doing. And it has a string of events that follow it. With my dad was a very tough thing. And then being teased on with who I thought was the love of my life was one of the toughest things I've ever gone through, and not knowing and having to find out. I'm giving you three pretty vulnerable things there. And I talk about bullying a lot, but I don't talk about the other two that much. Now, you asked me a question after that. You said, what are your biggest learnings from them? And my 15-year-old self would be, don't trust people so easily. My now self would say that my biggest learning is that I've learned from every single one, and I've become this upgraded and leveled up person. I've evolved as a character. I've understood that we all make mistakes. And I have an amazing relationship with my dad now, and I've forgiven those people who treated me wrong. But to understand that life doesn't always serve you a good hand, and if it serves you the one that maybe you didn't expect, it's been put there to test you. Maybe it hasn't been put there to break you. So yeah, you got me a bit on the edge of emotion.
No, I'm sorry, but at the same time, it just makes me admire and respect you even more. I mean, I respect the fact that that you would talk about those things, and I'm grateful for you sharing them. I also wonder as well if you let me explore it just a little bit more, and that is that I wonder whether one of the lessons is learning to keep a little piece of yourself, because I wonder sometimes whether when we fall in love, whether that's family, whether that's a partner, that we give too much of ourselves away, and that when we give them parts of ourselves away, that it's always a risk, right? Like, people talk about trust, and what the people don't realize is that there is no trust without risk. But how much risk? Do you know what I mean? Like, with your parents, you don't really get the choice. You know, they're your caregivers. They're the ones that influence you. They're the ones that that shape the way that you think about the world. And it's only later in life that you get to change that if you become aware of it. But when you meet people in life and you fall in love and you believe that there's this shared experience and you give a large part of yourself to them, I wonder if the lesson is sometimes that you just got to keep a little bit of yourself for yourself. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wish I sort of had that advice when I was younger. But you had to learn it, right? You had to understand it,
and that's the key.
I don't. It's amazing what heartbreak is a really interesting one, because I've got the pain. The pain is like nothing I've ever imagined, and the pain lasts for so long. It's because it's a bereavement, isn't it?
It is a bereavement. Loss. But yeah, the person, people think bereavement's about death, and actually it's about loss, exactly as you say. And I think the problem with that is that when someone passes away, they're never going to walk into a room again. They're never going to text you sporadically again. But all of a sudden, there's this feeling of grief, and this person's still there. That messes with people, man. That's difficult.
Oh, that is so true, isn't it?
Yeah, they're still there.
They're there. You're able to communicate, but you just can't.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry I threw 3 years. It's just hard to pinpoint one. And you said, and it's interesting to analyze them and to realize that I'm constantly doing the work on things that I went through and have to understand, and why I react so in some ways that could be better, and how I could be better for those around me, and how next time I'm in a relationship, how do I show up, and how do I maybe pick more wisely?
Yeah.
But we are all a product of who we were, or sort of what we've gone through, right? And I know I'm not talking rocket science here, but I am who I am because of I'm sort of more like a 75% nurture, 25% nature. I believe we are we are a product of our parents, we're a product of our experience, and I guess how we frame our experience. I guess as a coach, and I know you do this, we want to try and help our clients reframe their journey so they look at it with a bit of gratitude, a bit of light. And I'm trying all the time to sort of do that with my experience.
It's difficult to coach yourself. It is very difficult. And betrayal, I would agree with you, is it's funny. My next question was, what emotion do you tend to avoid or dislike having the most? And when I heard you say betrayal, I was like, there's an emotion no one wants to have. Do you know what I mean? No one's picking to be betrayed. I mean, people always find it interesting when I talk about values, and one of my values is suffering. And people go, what? And they think I'm some sort of freaky weirdo. But what I mean by suffering is that every significant lesson I've ever learned in my life came attached to suffering. So I'd only be avoiding if I didn't say to myself, every time suffering starts to come up, I go, okay, I'm going to learn this as early as I can. I'm not going to let it get all the way down here before I finally accept it as a lesson. I'm going to dig in here, and I'm going to learn this one now. And betrayal is significant, really significant, and a very painful one. And trust is a very powerful, I don't know what you'd call it, emotion, I suppose. And
value as well.
Value.
It's now at the top of mind. You want to live your life by your values, yeah, and a lot of people don't know their values, and it's actually really interesting. I work with clients on the values, and I've worked on mine, and interestingly, I have changed here and there as I've become a coach and working with people. My values have changed. I've never put something like suffering in values. I think that's really interesting because as a result of the suffering, you become who you are. That's a really interesting take on a value. But what makes you tick? What makes you, I made the decision to leave the show to do to do safe space based because it didn't align with my values. If I know my values, all my decisions, my big decisions can be based on those, and then I feel authentic. And then Absolutely. If I live authentically, I don't look back with regret having gone, I should have lived my life like this.
Absolutely. No, you couldn't have said it better myself. I always use the analogy of an iPhone. I say your iPhone's the hardware and the OS is the software. And when the software needs updating, chaos comes, right? Apps stop working, it starts switching itself off and on. It's constantly telling you to do the update. And that's our values. That's why everyone freaks out when they're 20, when they're 30, when they're 40s, because let me take a stab in the dark. Your values are very different at 40 than they were when you were 20. And you're not listening. You're still going out and getting drunk till 3 a.m. Maybe that doesn't align with your life anymore. Do the update.
Yeah.
Do the update. That's the advice.
I love that. Do the update.
Yeah, do the update.
What can you do?
Do the update because we avoid it, and we do it with our phones. We don't do the update because we're busy, right? We're busy on our phones. We don't want WhatsApp to go off live for 10 minutes or whatever it is, so we don't do the update. But when we do the update, guess what? Everything works again. Everything seems clearer. But just going back to
that reminds me to do my update.
yeah. Well, yeah, there's that too. But what is the emotion you tend to avoid, do you think? Just before we close it down. You look like you had it.
One thing that I don't know if this is the answer, but I think it's sadness. One thing I find it hard to feel. I don't cry a lot. I never cry, actually. And it frustrates me. And it's not, I'm willing and able to speak emotionally. I'm here with you right now. I felt emotional, but tears never come. And I don't know why they don't. And it's something that I sort of want to, I don't know if is that just me because I just don't need to cry? Or is it because I don't access another level? Is there an element of trying to stay strong? There's part of my upbringing where I had to be strong for everyone. I had to be the person that was there. I felt like I had to hold the fort up a bit. And so did I have to keep a strong face? And as a result, it's the reason why I don't show real emotion and cry. And so maybe is it sadness? I don't know. Is it
someone like yourself? I would imagine is fear. Crying's a really interesting thing. I'm fascinated. I'm writing a book at the moment and I'm researching a lot on crying. I find it incredible that there's this mechanism within the body that happens autonomously that helps dissipate and release emotion. And it just happens. When I was a kid, my dad used to beat me. I cried. And then he'd beat me till I stopped crying, which taught me to stop crying. And it wasn't until something happened to me a couple of years ago and I snuck off into my garage and played Johnny Cash's Hurt 3 times until I cried and then I couldn't stop. you know, because I knew that I needed to cry. Crying is incredibly powerful. It's the emotion. It's the emotion that you need to have, and allowing yourself to have that moment is probably the greatest act of self-care anyone can give themselves, I think, personally.
Well, I'm in the search of it. And,
Yeah.
maybe I need to listen to Johnny Cash Hurt, and
It's a hell of a
that'll
song.
spur
It's a
on.
lot of pain in that, I tell you now.
My biggest fear in life is not living up to my potential.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I actually,
regret.
so as a result, as a result, I overwork, and I
Mm.
over try and optimize my life, and I wake up as earlier than try and wake up earlier than everyone else, and then I don't want to wait. I try and gym to make sure my mind. I'm got an adaptogenic mushroom coffee that I drink. I mean, I'm overly optimized. My food is delivered to my door. It's just perfectly in line with my macros. I put myself under a lot of pressure as a result, and I've actually realizing this more now, that my actions are based on that. I'm so scared of not achieving that. I know that will help me towards reaching my goals, but I also want to enjoy it while I do it.
I can, do you know what I hear from that? And I'm not going to dig into it because otherwise it sounds like a therapy session, but control, your relationship with control. I wonder if that is something that's worth looking into out of curiosity. Because, and I think a lot of blokes have that, you know, even not crying is a control thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. You're remarkable.
But it's
Sorry, go ahead.
No, but I was gonna. That's very kind. It's all these things I'm searching to find a meaning. Really, it's these there are topics that we spoke about today. I've never spoken on a podcast or spoken and openly delved deeper. And these are things like my relationship with my dad, or this feeling of not being good enough, or this these different fears that I have, or not crying, and all these things that are very raw and vulnerable to openly speak about, and I'm really willing and have loved speaking about them. But they're things I'm trying to work out.
Yeah, of course.
And I think over time, if you ask the question enough, you'll find an answer. You'll delve, you'll think about it, right?
Yeah.
So I guess always on that journey of trying to zoom out, look at the bigger picture. What's going on? Why do I feel like this? Instead of going, I'm just not a crier.
Yeah. No,
I'm just. I was a bad hand. The fact that happened to my parents, or I was bullied because I'm just like this. I'm just not good enough. We could so easily fall to the comfortable. Well, that's what it is. But actually, there's always deeper. Meaning.
Always. And I got a lot of time for you, man. You're a top bloke, and I'm so grateful for your time. So grateful for what you shared today. You've offered value on another level, if I'm honest. The last question is there anything that you think that would be helpful to people that you'd like to pass along about self-development?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about it so much today, haven't we? But I'd probably say the first thing is zoom out. As soon as I started asking myself that question a bit, I started to realize that often the light is nearer than we think in our darkest times.
Love that.
And often the lesson is around the corner if we just zoom out.
Oh my God, that's great advice. No, it really is good advice, because it's only when you zoom out do you start to see other people's perspectives. And when you start to see other people's perspectives, things start to make sense, and then you understand them instead of being stuck in that cycle of blame and anger. That's incredible advice. Yeah. Incredible advice.
Oh, and also we appreciate our journey more.
Yeah, you see where you've been.
I say it.
Yeah.
But I say that as I try myself to, because we all live our life zoomed in. And if we looked back and went, whoa, look where I was then, and we look at, and we zoom out a little bit and realize that maybe our issues aren't so bad when they're not so bad. And even if they are bad, we realize that we have people around us, and there are people who care, Yeah. There's always someone that cares.
Always.
Then life isn't so bad,
I keep saying it. You're a top guy, man. You really are, and I really admire what you're doing. I think I'm excited. I'm excited to see somebody like you doing something that you're doing. So I'm going to be watching with keen eyes, and anything that I can ever do to help, I'm always there, man. So just before we go, let people know where they can find you. Point them to anything you want to draw their attention to, and just tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. You can find me if you really want to follow me. You don't have to, but if you want to, I'm JL Cowdrey, Julius Cowdrey. There are not many Juliuses around, But if you want to join Safe Space that we've spoken about in detail, I felt very grateful to speak about it, Johnny. Thank you for asking the questions. safespaceglobal.co.uk. Safe Space is free to join. If you want to join a coaching community, you can. But if you want to be a part of a place of like-minded people wanting to connect and do better, then we'd love to see you.
That's brilliant. And once again, thank you for your time. I've learned a lot today, and I'm sure others will too. And thank you again. And let's catch up another time.